Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Shaun Tamane, the host of Politics with Shaun Tamane. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm very excited. One of my mentees sent me a question. It reads, how much do the rules of the Constitution, elections, court matter in shaping political outcomes and political behavior? Whenever I start with such a question, the best thing that I do is to ensure that I have an understanding of the question. So it becomes important for me to paraphrase the question so that it is easier for me to comprehend what the question requires of my response, and for me to also know how to break down certain elements which are necessary in dealing with academic work. So firstly, in paraphrasing the question, I would rather point it as such. To what extent do constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions influence political outcomes and shape political behavior? So I will have two parts in answering this question. The first one would be where I actually focus on what are constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions. And then I will focus on to what extent do constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions influence political outcomes and shape political behavior in South Africa. Remember, in everything that I do, it has to be academic, which means that I have to also educate instead of just going on and just answering a question one of my mentees sends. So now, firstly, let us look at the constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions. Do not worry about what my hand is doing. I have to navigate through my laptop as I present this work. So these three elements, right, are fundamental components of a democratic political system, each playing a distinct role in shaping governance, political behavior, and outcomes. Now let us look at the breakdown of what they entail. Firstly, constitutional provisions refer to the principles, the rules and frameworks established in a country's constitution. And the provisions define the structure of government, the distribution of powers, and the rights and responsibilities of citizens and institutions. Now, these key aspects include the separation of powers, which is a division of authority among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches to prevent concentration of power. We have fundamental rights, which guarantee us civil liberties, such as freedom of speech, equality before the law, and protection from discrimination. We also look at the rule of law, which ensures that all individuals and institutions are subject to the law, promoting fairness and accountability. We also look at the amendment procedures, in which are processes for modifying the Constitution to adapt to changing societal needs. Now, these constitutional provisions serve as the foundation for governance, influencing how political systems operate and how power is exercised. One other important subject is the electoral processes. Electoral processes encompass the methods and procedures through which citizens choose their representative leaders, or their representatives and leaders. These processes are critical for ensuring democratic participation and legitimacy. Now, the key components include voting systems, wherein are mechanisms such as proportional representation or first past the post that determine how votes are translated into seats. As you all know, in the South African government, we do have the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. And according to how voters have voted for representatives, this is directly translated into seats. So we have the election administration as well, where the organization and oversight of elections by independent bodies to ensure fairness and transparency. Campaign regulations, which are rules governing political campaigns, including funding, advertising, and candidate eligibility. We also look at the voter participation, which are efforts to ensure inclusivity, such as voter registration drives and accessibility measures. Now, electoral processes shape political outcomes by determining who holds power and how policies are formulated and implemented. Lastly, we look at the judicial decisions, which are rulings made by courts, particularly higher courts, like the Constitutional or Supreme Court, that interpret and enforce the law. These decisions play a crucial role in shaping political and social landscapes. Now, looking at the key aspects, we can firstly look at the constitutional interpretation, where courts clarify the meaning and application of constitutional provisions, often resolving disputes between branches of government or between the state and individuals. We have protection of rights, which are judicial rulings which safeguard fundamental rights and freedoms, ensuring the laws and government actions comply with the constitutional principles. Most importantly, checks and balances. Courts act as a check on the executive and the legislative branches, preventing overreach and upholding the rule of law. Precedent setting, which are judicial decisions which establish legal precedents that guide future cases and influence policy development. Now, these judicial decisions ensure that governance aligns with constitutional principles and that individual rights are protected. So now the interconnection and impact between the three, it is that together the constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions from the backbone of a democratic system, they interact and shape political outcome behavior in such that they define the rules of governance and political participation. They ensure accountability and transparency in decision making, and they protect citizens' rights and promote equality, influencing public trust in institutions and the legitimacy of political systems. So now we need to understand these elements because they are essential for analyzing how political systems function and how they impact society. So I wanted to look at one important area to answer the question that you posed to me. Because we need to ask ourselves, to what extent do constitutional provisions, electoral processes, and judicial decisions influence political outcomes and shape political behavior in South Africa? So on the second part of this video, I will focus on the constitutional provisions and how do they support the South African Constitution, rather, with a particular focus on the emphasis on human rights, equality, and the rule of law, and how this influences governance and political behavior. I will also focus on electoral processes, and the biggest question is to ask that to what extent do South Africa's electoral systems, including proportional representation and the role of the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, impact political representation and voter behavior. I will also look at the judicial decisions and answer how do rulings by the Constitutional Court and other judicial bodies shape political outcomes and uphold democratic principles and address socio-political challenges. So that is what I will look into on the next video that I will post after this one, where I will need to analyze these elements and pose a question to assess the strengths and limitations of South Africa's democratic framework in fostering accountability, inclusivity, and stability while also addressing ongoing challenges such as corruption, inequality, and political polarization. See you on the next one.